Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tina Tehranchian, and I'm a Planned Giving Consultant with Donor Motivation Program. And I'm very happy to be hosting this event today and talking to Nicola Elkins. Nicola is the president of Cause Strategies, Inc., a charitable wealth management solutions provider since 2008. She's also the founder and CEO of Benefaction Foundation. Prior to establishing Cause Strategies, Nicola spent 20 years in the financial services industry, holding several senior roles. She has an MSc from the London School of Economics and a BA from McGill University. She is the managing editor of the Master Financial Advisor Philanthropy course offered by the Knowledge Bureau. She's also the past president of Rotary Club of Westmount, Quebec, and of Le Manoir, a home for independent senior living in Westmount. Nicola, welcome today, and thank you for joining us. So we're going to be talking today about donor advised funds and their relationship with charities, the challenges and the opportunities, and how we can make things better for both sides. Donor advised funds, as we all know, have had huge growth in the last several years, and there are billions of dollars that are being held at various donor advised funds. From the charity sector perspective, this is money that could have ended up in the charitable sector directly and now is being held in these donor advised funds and released over the next several years. So there have been a lot of discussions and sometimes some negative repercussions in terms of the relationship between charities and donor advised funds, but there are many positives as well. So Nicola, I want to start asking you today, when it comes to the relationship between charities and DAFs, what is working and what is not working? So let's start with some examples of things that are not working. I've heard a lot from charities about anonymity of donors and how they have no clue sometimes as to who these donors are, so they cannot properly steward them and get bigger and more donations from them down the road. What have your observations been around this?
Well, Tina, I think that we need to figure out a better model of stewardship of donors between DAF organizations and charities. And I think we need to start to work collectively toward evolving our industry for its betterment and growth. And that's part of the reason why I agreed to join this conversation with you, so that we can have more of an open dialogue. In terms of what's not working, I think there's still a lot of confusion out there about what DAFs are and how they operate. I mean, DAFs are essentially a charitable investment account. Donors can make deposits or donations into that account and then withdraw or make grants out to grantees from it. So it's a pretty simple structure. In terms of anonymity, there have been suggestions that it's always anonymous when grants are coming from a donor advised fund, but that's not the case. We provide privacy preferences, or at Benefaction Foundation anyway, for our donors, and we provide the grantees or the charities that receive grants from us with the information that the donors request. So yes, anonymity is one, but it's not very prevalent in my experience. And if the donor specifically requests it, like I said, it's rare. Usually, donors will name their fund. Sometimes it will have their fund name in it. And that is the information that we share, as well as passing along any other wishes or specific directions for a particular program that the donor might have for that grant. But it's also possible for donors to select that we provide the charity with their full name and address so that the charities can steward the donors directly. And if that's what they request, then that is what we'll do. We always provide with a grant, whether it go by credit card, EFT, or by check, a letter which stipulates all of that information for the charities that we're making grants to. So that's one of the things that's not working, and I think partly that's a miscommunication, which is why we have to improve things. I also think that, one of the things that we get a lot of calls about is development officers will call us asking for information that we have already provided. They know that a grant has come in, but for some reason, that letter that I talked about is being separated from the knowledge that a grant has come in through Benefaction Foundation. And so, our letter, as I said, is very specific, providing donor-specific information and a direction that they have. But it's clear that that letter is being separated from the gift on the list that the development officer is calling us to get more information on. So I think that some changes in terms of CRM notifications immediately when these letters and or checks are received are put in place at the charitable organizations so that they can better share the information internally. I'm not trying to say, it's all the fault of the charity, but there's definitely a lot of we see a lot of examples where that happens, and the information that we've provided at the outset with the gift is lost or not in the hands of the right people, I should say.
That's a very good point. And so there's internal procedures within charities that have to be aligned to make sure that when the information comes from the DAFs, it is stored properly and is accessible to the development directors. And also, I think there's probably not uniformity in terms of procedures of all DAFs. And, Benefaction has good policies in terms of giving donors choices to stay anonymous or make their information known to charities. But would you say all DAFs do that?
No, I was surprised actually at many of the comments that I heard in one of the DAF sessions at the CAGP conference last year. I learned that there's a vast difference between what some DAF providers do in giving information to charitable organizations or grantees versus what we do and what I know others do. And I also realized that the differences between that is causing some disinformation circulating out there about all DAF organizations. I think, though, that having these conversations is the first step in the right direction. I know that CAGP is looking to establish a sort of a DAF working group to try to discuss this very kind of thing, to see whether or not we can streamline things, improve our relationships with charitable organizations, and and make things better for our collective donors.
And this is a situation we see with a lot of emerging industries, new industries, where rules are being set as we go along. So I'm sure things will get better in the DAF world as well, and we'll see some harmonizing of procedures and rules that would benefit the charitable sector as well.
Sure.
One of the other complaints that I've heard from charities is the fact that disbursement quotas, which have been raised to 5% recently, are not enforced sometimes, and larger donors are given disbursement holidays. Could you explain why that might happen and what's at play?
Well, I have also heard that this is true for some DAF organizations. and they will allow a given donor not to have to disperse in a given year. And that's because they have the flexibility to do that, because the requirement from the government is to meet the disbursement quota at the foundation's aggregate level, not at every individual fund level. And so it enables organizations to be able to give what I call a disbursement quota holiday. At Benefaction Foundation, though, I have to say, our policy is not to allow that. We require every fund to disperse 5%, because that's our required minimum. Most of our donors disperse more than that, which is fantastic. But our policy is to hold every DAF to that 5%. It is a lot more work for us, which is another reason why I think donor advised fund foundations don't do this. But I believe it's in the spirit of the government legislation and the increase in the DQ to ensure that organizations like ours are in fact making the disbursements that the charity needs.
Great. So first of all, any of our attendees who have any questions, please put your questions in the chat section. We will try and get to them if we have time at the end of our conversation. And if we don't, we promise we will get back to you with the answers individually. So Nicola, let's talk about some examples of things that are working when it comes to the relationship between DAFs and charities. I guess one of them that I could think about is increased donations from those donors who want to stay anonymous or want to take advantage of the administrative simplicity of DAFs. Can you think of anything else that you've seen that works?
Well, I think that, DAFs are the fastest growing charitable giving vehicle in Canada. And this is not new. This has been going on for quite some time. And they are bringing more money to the sector for sure. Some might say, as you mentioned earlier, that we're just an intermediary getting in the way of funds flowing directly to individual charities. But there's no evidence to suggest that that's the case, and that donors would otherwise be giving, $1 million gift out to one individual charitable organization. DAF donors like these vehicles for a number of reasons. First and foremost, we know that they like it because of the ability to invest and grow the value of their charitable assets for long-term charitable purposes, which will ultimately be destined for charitable organizations of their choice. We know that it gives them the ability to time their grants, and whether they be large or small, they can set up grants as a one-off on a recurring monthly, quarterly, annual basis after their death through a bequest. It's a simple structure, really. It's kind of like having their own private foundation without the accompanying cost and complexity of setting one up. And they're inherently flexible. Most DAFs these days, they will allow flow-through donations directly to charity right off the bat. They will allow short-term funds to be set up, say for 5 or 10 years, after which they'd fully disperse. They will, of course, enable bequest donations and sometimes wind up funds once the donor has passed. But they also have ongoing legacy gifts that they would continue to maintain after a donor has passed. So those are the reasons why I think donors are keen to use this vehicle for giving. And another one is, advisor involvement. Tina, you're an advisor. You have a number of donor advised funds set up. DAFs are very focused on bringing the financial advisor relationships into the fold in the charitable giving world with their clients, since that's where the bulk of the DAF donations are coming from. It's the financial advisor community that are bringing, our revenue to us. So it's a question of working with those investment advisors and their firms to help to educate them, spread the word about the advantages of gift planning and different ways to integrate gift planning into a client's wealth and estate plan. I mean, that's the bulk of the kind of work that we do. And now, as you mentioned, we have the MFAP, Master Financial Advisor in Philanthropy, which is offered through the Knowledge Bureau and CAGP. And it's an advisor accredited course to raise the bar in terms of gift planning awareness and strategies. But, I have a number of other examples. I know I've been going on for quite a bit, but I've got some other examples of great working relationships that we have established with a few charities that are the kind of thing that I think we need to do more of. So a while ago, we were really struggling with dealing with humanitarian and environmental crisis situations, given the onslaught of granting that's requested during that time. So we were having issues with credit card donation platforms not ensuring accreditation of our donors, but only accrediting the foundation or acknowledging any specific messages from them. And we had confusion with our EFT or check grants being, as I mentioned before, being separated from the accompanying letter that we send out when it passes. And so in a number of cases, what we did, my team reached out to, in particular, the Red Cross, World Vision, United Way of Toronto, all of whom are organizations that we grant out to regularly. And what we did was we established a new process whereby we make a weekly grant by EFT to that organization, and we send them a spreadsheet by email listing all of the grants to total to the aggregate of the amount of the EFT with the donor information that we're allowed to share, and also with an accompanying letter, which would provide those details that I talked about before. This was a very positive step, and it has established lasting improvements in granting, as well as with contacts within those organizations, both development officer contacts and finance officer contacts. And it helps the charities to understand our grants better and to steward their donors for the respective DAFs better. But it also helps us in terms of streamlining our grant administration. We have fewer calls with confusion from development officers as a result. So, I think that is the best example that I can give you in terms of what is working well. But it's not something that proliferates the industry for sure, and we don't do it with every organization. In a perfect world, we'd have dedicated staff that are dealing with charitable organizations to be able to share that kind of information. But right now, that work is falling onto the grants administration team, and often it's a challenge, particularly in busy times. So, and we are a donor-advised fund organization. So the first priority is communication with the donors, and as I mentioned, the advisors that have brought them to our organization. And so, we need to do a little bit of a better job on that for sure, and take more steps like we have taken with these other three organizations that I talked about.
Great. That was a great example, actually, of how, the relationship between DAFs and charities should be, and how a collaborative approach can help solve problems for both sectors. So thank you for sharing that. You talked about the bequest aspect of DAFs and being able to leave instructions regarding bequests. As a financial advisor, actually, that's one of the things that I really recommend to my clients who want to leave money to 30 different charities. I had one client who came in and we started talking about bequests, and she said, "Oh, my lawyer told me do not leave any bequests to any charities because it will be a nightmare for your executor." And I said, well, that's not a really good advice, because I know you're a charitable person. You want to leave money to these charities, but I can understand your lawyer's concern about the administrative nightmare that that could create for your executor. But the donor advised fund can solve that problem. You can just have the donor advised fund as the sole charity in your will, and then give grants to 30 different charities through the donor advised fund, and your executor will thank you. Are you seeing more and more examples of that?
Absolutely, we are. We are constantly getting new requests about information about how to set up a bequest to a donor advised fund in the will, whether it be an existing donor advised fund or a new one that's set up by virtue of the will. We have some draft wording that we can provide to advisors and or donors and their lawyers to put in the will in order to make the grant to our organization or any organization. But the beauty about doing it through a donor advised fund, particularly when the donor has got multiple charities that they want to donate to, is that they can provide us with instructions and they can change their mind, and throughout their lifetime, continue to evolve their wishes without having to go back and rewrite the will or make changes to the will. So which is a much bigger deal. So
That is true.
that is one of the reasons why I think that the use of the donor advised fund through bequest is popular, and increasingly so.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. Nicola, how do you think DAFs could operate so they can be more useful to charities?
Well, I mean, I think I've given some examples about that. I think that, we can do a better job of sharing information, but I think it cuts both ways. We have to work together to change the model of stewardship and be more collaborative with each other. I think that's, that is key, because, these organizations are not going away anytime soon. And so the more we can do to collaborate and ensure that donors' needs are served, the better.
Excellent. So what sort of help do you think DAFs can provide donors who are undecided as to which charities to give to?
Well, I'd say, largely we don't provide a lot of assistance in that regard. And that's because 95% plus, probably 98% of the grants that we administer are coming from donors who know exactly where they want these funds to go. It's part of the whole ethos of the donor advised fund structure that allows them to do that. However, in some cases, we do provide research on specific areas of interest for donors. And that helps to open doors to organizations for them, so that they can check out potential grantees that are important for them in terms of their area of focus. In other cases, and usually this is when there's a larger sum involved, we will conduct a series of meetings with the donor, firstly to get a good understanding of their philanthropic goals and values, and which areas of interest are most important to them. And then we do some more robust research in terms of initial screenings of organizations for relative fit, applicable programs based on those areas of focus, and of course registration status with CRA. And then subsequently, there's a further screening, which we use to generate a final list of organizations that our donors might want to support. And that would include clarity of purpose and mandate, who's on the board, is there evidence of sound financial statements, fundraising and administrative costs, clear evidence of information of programs and services and their efficacy, like have they had any awards, are they taking new approaches, that kind of thing. But we're not making recommendations to donors. We are just providing, based on desk research, the best information that we can to share with them.
Okay.
But as I say, this is a very small part of what we do. We don't get asked to do this very often.
Now, over the course of the summer, we have dealt with all sorts of natural disasters, forest fires, climate disasters. And over the last, couple of years, we've had wars, and now a new war is looming. So should DAFs provide information about topical disaster relief issues and how donors can help with causes like forest fires and climate disasters? Or would that be considered favoritism and they should steer clear of that?
Well, I think we should provide more information about that in response to specific disasters. And I don't think that we at Benefaction do a very good job of doing that. So in fact, I've already shared, an example of best practices when we were working with relief organizations. But we're also working toward posting topical disaster relief pages on our website where we can list a number of organizations that are doing good work, where we can list matching programs, which donors are always keen to take advantage of if the government is going to make matches on donations for specific causes. But not only on our website, we have an online donor portal where donors who have a DAF with us can log in and make grant requests. And we are going to try to implement the similar information and awareness on those pages. So I don't think we, as a donor-advised fund organization, will ever be definitely pushing donors to make donations in that way. But we're certainly going to try to heighten awareness for our donors about how they can respond to those causes.
Okay, great. We only have 2 more minutes left. I'm going to ask you this last question. Hopefully you can cover it quickly. How would the new trust accounting rules affect DAFs and charities?
Well, we're not sure yet. The jury proverbially is still out on that. We have, a determination still needs to be made as to whether or not a donor-advised fund is indeed an express trust, which would require every underlying fund to complete a T3. I personally, I don't think this was the intention of the government. I think there's still some confusion out there, and we are awaiting clarification. I know that the CAGP's Government Relations Committee have been involved very much in providing information to the government and trying to seek clarity. And so, we're waiting to figure out whether or not this is actually going to come to pass, because for organizations like ours, this is no small thing. We have over 1,200 donor-advised funds. That's 1,200 T3s, along with one T3010 for our tax returns. So, that's and the purpose of a T3, of course, is to report income, but for tax purposes, but we're not taxable. So I'm not really sure that that's going to be an issue for us, but we shall see.
Thank you so much, Nicola, for your insights, for the information you shared. We have a number of questions, actually, but we do not have time to answer them right now. We will get back to each and every person who asked questions and provide as much information as we can to answer your question. This is the last fireside chat for 2023. Thank you to all of you for joining us. And I hope you will join us also in 2024 for our new series. Thanks again and have a great day.